folks. This is Pastor Mike Hoggard, pastor of Bethel Church in Festus, Missouri, and head of prophetic research ministry with another Watchman video broadcast. The temperature right now inside of our secret broadcasting compound, 85 degrees. I got a little warm in here today, so I'm going to try to work through it. Either hot or cold, doesn't matter. We're going to bring you, we're going to be Watchmen on the wall for you today. Apparently we've had it all wrong. We have had it all wrong for years. You know, we've been reading the Bible trying to find out who God is, and apparently we've got it all wrong. I say that with my tongue firmly planted inside of my cheek because here is a story from WorldNet Daily. Some of you sent me this, and I caught this week. Man honored by Obama says that God is a sinful, homophobic bigot. A man honored by President Obama as a civil rights pioneer has told a Christian ministry leader the God of the Bible is a, quote, sinful, homophobic bigot who needs to repent and seek forgiveness for the pain and suffering which his sinful homophobia has needlessly inflicted upon gay people for the past 4,000 years, unquote. The comments came from Frank Kameny, a longtime activist for homosexual rights, who once famously said bestiality is all right as long as the animal doesn't mind, and the animal rarely does. According to Peter LaBarbera, president of the nonprofit Americans for Truth, Kameny sent an email to his Christian organization a few weeks ago. Kameny, who was dismissed from his federal job as an astronomer in the 1950s because of his homosexuality, told LaBarbera, "You have the whole issue of sin versus vis-a-vis homosexuality on the wrong foot. It is your homophobic God of Leviticus and of the Bible as a whole, himself, herself, itself, themselves, who is the sinner because of homophobia." Now, I want to bring the Bible right into this deal and let me, and by the way, I was looking at his picture a while ago. This guy is quite the old gentleman, I'll say this. And I'll tell you what, when you get that age, you ought to be on your knees begging God for mercy. Because you're fixing, I would tell this Mr. Kameny, you're fixing to go meet the man that you called a sinful homophobic bigot. You're fixing to go meet the God that you call that. Here's what the Bible says. In fact, this guy is living proof of the testimony of the Scriptures. We go to Romans chapter 1, and this is where Paul is talking about guys like this. You know, professing themselves to be wise, they became as fools. But I want us to look at, let's see here. Verse 24, wherefore God also gave them up to uncleanness. Now, get the language here in the Scriptures. God gave them up. God, and we're going to see here later that God turned them over. Now, watch this. Gave them up to uncleanness through the lust of their own hearts, that's this guy here, to dishonor their own bodies between themselves, who changed the truth of God into a lie. God, according to the Bible, according to what I believe, is a loving, all-knowing, merciful God who loves when people repent of their sins, no matter what they've done, and calls upon Him in truth and honesty and says, God, save me. I don't want to burn in hell. That's the kind of God that we serve. But those who turn their hearts against Him in hatred, and I'll be honest with you, I don't think I've ever, and I'm sure there's people out there, but I don't think I've ever read or heard from the lips of a man the words that this guy spoke. But it says, who changed the truth of God into a lie. So that's what this guy did. And worshiped and served the creature more than the Creator, who is blessed forever. Amen. For this cause, God gave them up. There it is again. He gave them up in verse 24. He gave them up here. God gave them up unto vile affections. For even their women did change the natural use into that which is against nature. Lesbianism and sodomy are against the very nature that God has created in us. It is natural for a man to desire a woman and a woman to desire a man. It is unnatural when those things are reversed. God said so. Verse 27, and likewise also the men, leaving the natural use of the woman. I mean, without being too graphic here, God designed the male to go with the female. Anything else is an utter abomination, not only unto God, but unto most people in the world. And likewise also the men, leaving the natural use of the woman, burned in their lust one toward another, men with men working that which is unseemly, and receiving in themselves that recompense of error, which was meet, or that the word meet means the word like sufficient. So this guy, because of his sinfulness, and here's where I think is a key issue here for those of us who believe the Bible and we're wanting to stand in the last days. Sin determines your doctrine. Your sin and how you treat your sin will determine your doctrine. The Bible talks about, and when Jesus was teaching in Mark chapter 4 about the parable of the seed and the sower, he talked about the deceitfulness of riches, and those were the thorns that choke out the word. The deceitfulness of the things of this world. Our sin will determine our doctrine. The deeper you are in sin, the worse your doctrine is going to be according to the Scriptures. This guy has gone all the way as far as God is concerned. And I truly believe in my heart that this man has been turned over and he is receiving in himself the recompense of his error. So verse 28, even as they did not like to retain God in their knowledge, here it is again, God gave them over to a reprobate mind to do those things which are not convenient. This guy, we're supposed to love everybody, and maybe I'm wrong on this, but I think this guy matches that description. 3 times God here said, God gave them up, God gave them up, God gave them over. He is turned over in his mind. Paul talked about his conscience being seared with a hot iron. His conscience has been seared. He sees absolutely, totally nothing wrong with what he's doing, even though it's against the laws of morality, it's against the laws of nature, and against the laws of God. He sees nothing wrong with what he's doing. And then he goes so far as to turn in his mind against the very God who created him by calling him a lying, sinful, homophobic bigot. And this is the guy that our president honored with an award. Troubling news. Democrats plan to steal the vote. A political correspondent is making waves with his stern warning that Democrats are scheming to manipulate the electoral process this election year by implementing a federal mandate to involuntarily register millions of people to vote, making the system ripe for unprecedented fraud and abuse. Democrats were very rattled by the November 3rd election results. Wall Street Journal reporter and political commentator John Fund told a crowd in November 2009 at a David Horowitz Freedom Center forum. What do liberals do when they lose elections? They change the rules. Fund is warning that Senator Charles Schumer and John Conyers plan to propose universal voter registration legislation, possibly within weeks. Schumer is definitely introducing a bill, Fund told WorldNet Daily. It's not public yet, but he's definitely going to do so. Now, here's what they're going to do. They're going to take everybody's name that right now is on some sort of government database. I don't care what it is. Medicare, Medicaid, welfare, it doesn't matter. Everybody's name that is in a government-run database, this law, and you can just conceive of something like this, number one, being passed, and number two, you can conceive of something like this really making a lot of American citizens angry at their government. But it's going to take everybody who is on a government database. Doesn't matter if they are registered to vote, doesn't matter even if they're legal citizens or legal residents of the United States of America. If their name is on a database, automatically this law will take their name and register them automatically to vote. So that probably we're fixing to add in this country untold millions of people whose names are going to be in a file system somewhere as registered voters. And you can just imagine the fraud. Everything's going to a computerized system now. And they say, well, that's better than paper. I don't think so. Computers can be hacked. I don't care how strict the protocols are. They can be hacked. And I'm telling you that probably somewhere down the line, somebody is going to massively put in a lot of votes for their particular candidate. And I tell you, if this vote starts getting known about and starts getting passed, you can write off the future of the United States of America. You can write off any hope of us ever having a decent election in this country. My guess is, and I've been thinking about all this and about the 2010 election and how these guys know that they're out of office. They have to know that they're fixing to be sent down the road. What were they going to do to stop that? It looks like this is one of the things that they're going to do to stop it. And I will tell you that this, and I want you to know where I stand. This law right here, in fact, I may just deal just with nothing else but on this broadcast, but this one thing right here. And I got a lot of stuff here. But I'll tell you, when I saw this, I cringed. My stomach tied up in knots. Because we already are looking at a situation in this country where we are in trouble. Our banking system is in trouble. Our financial, our healthcare system everything is in trouble in this country. We have people running the government that, number one, are probably not qualified to run the government. Number two, that are running the government contrary to two things. Number one, contrary to the scriptures. That's why Obama can honor a guy such as this. But also, they are running the government contrary to the Constitution of the United States of America and the Bill of Rights. I'm telling you, at some point, the average American citizen, Joe the plumber, whoever it is going to say, we've had enough. Hopefully, they do it in the voting booth in a legal election. But if that is not allowed to take place, then we're looking at probably the worst of all scenarios for the United States of America. We're in trouble in this country. When they start messing with our greatest weapon right now in this country, our greatest weapon beyond any doubt is our ability to vote. And to vote out the people that are destroying the country and hopefully vote in people that will help the country. If they take that weapon, see, this is all about disarmament. Since I'm just operating here on, I'm trying to be led by the Lord here, I'm going to go back to 1 Samuel. This has been on my mind this week. And let's see here if I can find it here real quick. 1 Samuel, I believe it's in chapter 13, 12, 14, somewhere around in there. If I don't find it very quickly, I'll just kind of tell you what it. But at the time of Saul, the Philistines were running the show in Israel, and it had gotten to a point here in the days of Saul. Oh, let's see. Boy, I just really want to find this because it's very, very powerful. In 1 Samuel chapter 13, in the days of Saul, the Philistines pretty much were running the show. The unrighteous, ungodly crowd in Israel, the enemies of God's people, were running the show to such an extent that they're the ones calling the shots on everything, and they were running the show so well that they had not permitted any of the Israelites a blacksmith. Look at this, in verse 19. Now there was no smith found throughout all the land of Israel. For the Philistines said, which, of course, made the phone books a lot smaller. When you take the name Smith out of the phone book, it decreases that much. Just a little joke here. There was no smith found throughout all the land of Israel, for the Philistines said, lest the Hebrews make them swords or spears. The Philistines did not want the Israelites to have weapons. They didn't want them to have arms. This was gun control in the days of the Philistines. And so they would not allow anybody to have, there was to be no blacksmith in all the land of Israel, because blacksmiths could make swords and make spears and sharpen them. Watch this in verse 20. But all the Israelites went down to the Philistines to sharpen every man his share and his coulter and his axe and his mattock. And I'm going to tell you something. The idea and the philosophy that the government is better off helping us than we can help ourselves, that is why we have gotten ourselves into this condition to begin with. Trade unions, civil rights groups, welfare recipients, everybody in this country, most everybody in this country, or the people in, let's say, the big cities, have decided that government has to help them live or they can't live without it. That is not only not the idea that our pilgrim forefathers had in this country, that is totally against the idea. As Americans settled from east to west in this country, they did so by and large without government help and government aid. They said, we don't need the government to do this, we don't need the government to do that. We actually need the government to stay. See, they're moving away from the federal government as they're moving west. That's what they're doing in this country. But here you have a situation now where most people have been hooked on the LSD of government welfare and government programs. And so now we have this mindset, and let's just deal with it with the arms issue for a minute. Now we have this mindset that says, oh, well, we need military in our streets because, there are dangers out there. We need the TSA to have more authority in our airports. We need the executive branch of the government to have total control over everything in order to keep us safe because we're just poor and helpless and we can't do it ourselves. And besides that, it's really not a good idea to have guns. And so in this day here, the Israelites were not able to defend themselves. What was the result of this? We move forward to 1 Samuel chapter 17, and here is a 6 cubits and a span giant, one man, making the entire land of Israel cower in fear. Why? They didn't have any sharp instruments. They did not. In fact, they were not allowed. Let me finish. They had a file for the mattocks and for the coulters and for the forks and for the axes to sharpen the goads. So it came to pass in the day of battle that there was neither sword nor spear found in the hand of any of the people that were with Saul and Jonathan, but with Saul and with Jonathan his son there was found. And the garrison of the Philistines went out to the passage of Michmash. Already to the point now in 1 Samuel chapter 17, I want you to listen to this. God showed me this several years ago. Now the Philistines gathered together their armies to battle, and were gathered together at Shochoh, which belongeth to Judah. I saw that one day, and God said, Mike, the Philistines are trespassing on the land that I gave them. I think it's time that we get rid of the trespassers. I think it's time that we shoo off the people that are in our inheritances. We have things that have been handed down to us. My family, my home, it has been handed down to me. It's a blessing to have the family that I have. And I want to pass the values that I have on to my children so they can hand them down to my grandchildren. By the way, I'm going to be a grandpa in July. And I want my grandchild to be raised in a country where there's freedom and where he is taught to rely upon the Scriptures. But we're living in a situation right now where the Philistines have moved in. They've moved into our home and they're trespassing. They've moved into our churches and they are trespassing. They have moved into the constitutionally ordered structures of our government and they are trespassing. And they shouldn't be there. And how did they get there? We go back here because we find out that the Philistines told us that we couldn't have any swords and we couldn't have any spears. And so I will tell you, no wonder the Obama administration and everybody else is going after your guns to disarm you. Why? Because in the day of battle, and you and I both know it's coming, in the day of battle, we won't be able to defend ourselves and our liberties and our property. They're also taking away the shield, the weapon of the voting ballot in this country. And I tell you, this guy Chuck Schumer, I can't even stand to look at this guy. I mean, I cannot stand to see that goofy smirk that he has on his face every time he shows up standing out there behind the congressman in victory over some new communistic, socialistic dictatorship bill that they passed. I said in the other day in our Watchman Pure Bible study that as of right this second, I don't believe that we live in tyranny. I'm going to amend that just a little bit. Somebody sent me something the other day and I read it and I agree with it. Right now, I'm not under a tyrannical government, but the same government that governs over me should govern over unborn babies. Unborn babies in this country live under a tyrannical government that would allow them to be murdered in cold blood with no repercussion whatsoever. That's tyranny. And if the government will take away the rights of unborn citizens in this country, the next step is to take away the rights of the already born citizens in this country. You see where I'm going? We may not be under the tyranny that, say, they are in China right now, but we are just 2, 3, 4 steps away from it. I don't know about you, but I really don't get close to ledges. You know what I'm saying? If I'm on top of a building somewhere, or someplace high or something like that, I am thankful for the fence and the barrier that keeps me from going over the edge. And I usually, it's not that I'm afraid. I'm not really afraid of heights. I'm afraid of falling real fast and landing hard. That's what I'm afraid of. But usually if I'm on a situation where there's an edge here and it's unprotected, I won't go there. And I'm telling you that we are close to the edge in this country. I will tell you this for 2 reasons. Number one, as Christians, we ought to watch unto prayer and keep our lives right with God. Number 2, if you're listening to me today and you're not saved, God showed me something today. I was dropping off a prescription at the pharmacy, and God showed me something today that I'm going to try to put in words in a later broadcast or a sermon or something like that. It has to do with the mark of the beast and the blood of Jesus Christ. And this really has nothing to do with DNA. It has everything to do with God's protection in the last days. And I will tell you this, as God had Israel put blood on the doorpost and on the lintel so that as the death angel came by, he was not allowed to go into that house to kill the firstborn children. And I will tell you that you can be right-wing, politically fundamental, conservative, conspiracy theorist out your wazoo. You can be all of those things, but I will tell you that if you are not saved and do not have the protection of the blood, you will either be killed and burn in hell in the war that's coming, or you will stand in line and take the mark of the beast. I promise you that's what's going to happen. Folks, we are running out of time in this country. The time to take a stand, a prayerful stand, is right now. Get on your knees and get right with God before it's too late. Let's move on. Man, it's just getting worse. The top Obama czar, Cass Sunstein. Here's another guy that when I see his face, I just go, try not to hate people, but man, the things that come out of their mouth. We've already talked about this guy several times on this broadcast. This guy's an idiot. This guy is an idiot appointed by the President of the United States to be a regulatory czar, which means he's the guy that's going to enact. He is, watch this now, he is an unelected official in this country who is going to enact regulations based upon his whims, based upon his socialistic ideas, rules and regulations that if you and I do not follow them, we'll be punished somehow, some way, because we didn't follow this guy's rules. And so here's what he came up with. In a lengthy academic paper, President Obama's regulatory czar, Cass Sunstein, argued the U.S. government should ban, quote, conspiracy theorizing. Among the beliefs Sunstein would ban is advocating that the theory of global warming is a deliberate fraud. What I'm here to tell you, it's not only a conspiracy theory, it's a conspiracy fact. It is a deliberate fraud, and I'm telling you that the whole idea of global warming is nothing but a United Nations, New World Order power grab over the sovereign land of the United States of America. Man, oh man. Boy, I tell you, I'm constantly, let me just share my heart with you. I got so much to do today. I don't know. I don't know if I'll get through it or not. I'm constantly torn in my mind and in my heart. And those of you who have watched me over the last few months, you can kind of see that ripple in my heart. And I try not to be unstable. But I see the New Testament full of grace. I see the New Testament full of how we as the church ought to act and behave ourselves how we should have been praying all along for our government and our governmental system so that they would not be tyrannical to us. I believe in government. I believe in the laws that are enacted to protect and to help mankind. Some of those are good, some of those are evil. And as long as those laws do not prohibit me from serving God the way this Bible tells me to do, then I'm to obey those laws. But I will tell you, you don't see a lot of civil disobedience here by the apostles. In fact, you see the Apostle Paul appealing to the Roman government based upon his rights as a half-citizen or as a citizen of Rome. He appealed, if you go read that in the book of Acts, he appealed to his rights as a citizen. Okay? Now, when they led Paul away to cut his head off, I don't see him with a patriot movement shooting all the Roman soldiers. I don't see that. However, I can tell you, point out in the Old Testament, everything that I see in the Old Testament shows you God's people defending their land. They defended their land. I know that there has to be an agreement in the Bible on all things. Pray for me, pray for this ministry, that we reach the biblical conclusion of how we're supposed to be in these days. I don't want to get it wrong, and I don't want to be on the wrong side. But anyway, Sunstein also recommended the government send agents, listen to this guy, send agents to infiltrate extremists who supply conspiracy theories to disrupt the efforts of the extremists to propagate their theories. I wonder who he's going to send over here. Oh my goodness. And by the way, I absolutely refuse to live in fear. That doesn't mean I don't experience fear. I just don't like it, and I plead to God to remove it from me, because I will tell you, okay, that number one, it doesn't matter how many laws, how many hate crimes they enact, how many Cass Sunsteins there are in the world, we have to say what we're told to say, irregardless of what the consequences, the earthly consequences are, because I will tell you that I would rather suffer earthly consequences than eternal ones. So we have an obligation to say what it is that we are supposed to say as Christians, as believers, according to the Scriptures, the King James Bible. Never apologize for that to anyone for that. But I will tell you, I'm not going to live in fear on government infiltration. I'm not going to live in fear on who might, be coming into our church. That they were calling us conspiracy theorists for thinking that our movement could be infiltrated by federal agents. I will tell you that in the days of Timothy McVeigh, while he was in with a group in eastern Oklahoma and northwestern Arkansas, and there's a bunch of groups down in that area that are kind of, okay? I will tell you that while McVeigh was in one of those camps, there were government agents. There was an FBI agent undercover in that camp that knew about what he was planning on doing. Some say that he was fostering it. I don't know that. I'm telling you, they were infiltrating there. They may infiltrate our church. They may infiltrate your church. But I will tell you, I've got a weapon. And you know what? They may take away my guns. They may take away my right to vote. But they will never, ever, ever take this Bible. They might take it out of my hands. They'll never take it out of my heart. And I'm telling you, they were saying that you conspiracy theorists think that everybody's out to get you. This guy is, and he admits to it. He's out to get us. He is the enemy of those who are trying to stand up and say, this is not right. And we think there's something wrong, and we think there's something going on. And he wants to, this is like the epitome of thought crimes. He wants to ban theories. He wants to ban you from thinking that somebody in the government might be doing something wrong and they're working together with somebody else. That is a conspiracy theory. He wants to ban you from it. In his 2008 Harvard Law paper, Conspiracy Theories, Sunstein and co-author Adrian Vermeule, a Harvard Law professor, asked, what can government do about conspiracy theories? We can readily imagine a series of possible responses. Number one, government might, this is Cass Sunstein talking here. Government might ban conspiracy theorizing. Number two, government might impose some kind of tax, financial or otherwise, on those who disseminate such theories. Now, it's interesting to me that they're calling this a tax. If it were a fine, it would be subject to the laws of this land, which say you cannot impose a fine on someone without due process, which means it has to go in a courtroom. They don't want that in a courtroom, and so that's why they call it a tax. That's why in this health care bill, anybody that doesn't enroll in government health care or do what the government tells them to do on this thing, they will impose not a fine on them, but a tax. If it's called a fine, then they have to go to court, and they don't want this stuff in a courtroom. That's why they call it a tax. I tell you what, I'm stirred up. I had somebody that's working on a church this morning brought in donuts. Should have never done that. I think the donuts I think they went right to my arms here, all right? Here's something, a sideline issue. Obama diverts CIA to spy on polar bears. Despite terrorist attacks against the United States recurring with the Fort Hood shooting and the December underwear bomber, President Obama has tasked the CIA with investigating global warming. Obama has resurrected a program formerly canceled by President Bush that shares information with the CIA's spy satellites and other classified sensors with environmental scientists. A program called Measurements of Earth Data for Environmental Analysis, or MEDIA, has already been used by a group of government-chosen scientists to measure Arctic sea ice. The interesting thing about here it is, Obama said, yeah, use our, now we know we can't win the war in Afghanistan. And we know that Iran's building nuclear weapons, and we know that we have enemies all over the world, and their camps are being built in Sudan and Yemen and Nigeria and all this stuff. But we need to find out whether or not the polar bears are fanning themselves. Stupid, absolutely stupid stuff. But here's the interesting thing I found out. They call it Medea. Here's a picture of Medea. You know who Medea is? She is a sorceress, a witch, who was married to Jason, Jason the Argonauts. And Jason was given these 3 tasks to do. I don't remember what they were. But he went to Medea. Watch this now. He goes to Medea to have her help him fulfill the tasks. So this is a picture. Medea is a picture of Jezebel. Remember, the spirit of Jezebel has a job to do. Her job is, she is responsible for the transfer of biblical authority, going from one place to another. So God's kingdom being transferred over to the kingdom of the devil. And there's a lot of realms to that, but anyway, but that's what Jezebel represents. And remember that Jezebel does all this through witchcraft, through sorcery. Through sorcery and witchcraft, she gets what her husband wants. That's who Medea is, and that's what this project is all about. It's about transferring the control of planet Earth from the dominion of mankind that God gave us to the kingdom of the devil in the last days. That's her job. Here's another one. Obama's TSA nominee targets anti-government Christians. Now, this shows up on Prison Planet, and I will tell you that Prison Planet's not my favorite site in the world, but I try to background check some of the things they say. And this one, I'm going to show you this guy. His name is Errol Southers. He's ranting about Christian identity terrorist groups. And so let's read the article, and then I'll show you the video. President Obama's nominee to head the TSA and boss the naked body scanners now being installed at airports across the country says that white Christian anti-government types will be the primary target of suspicion for authorities. Former FBI agent Errol Southers has been under scrutiny following Republican efforts to block his confirmation. After it emerged, Southers had abused his power to run a database check on his ex-wife's new boyfriend. So anyway, I want to play this video for you. So I want you to hear the ranting that comes out of his mouth about these Christian identity people and these Christians, these fundamental Christians, like me, that are terrorists to our country. And this is the guy in charge of running the TSA scanning idea. Take a listen.
Most of the domestic groups that we have to pay attention to here are white supremacist groups. They're anti-government, in most cases anti-abortion. They are usually survivalist type in nature, identity-oriented. If you recall, Buford Furrow came to Los Angeles in, I believe it was 1999, when he went to 3 different Jewish institutions, museums, and then wound up shooting people at a Children's Community Center, and then shooting a Filipino postal worker later on. Matthew Hale, who's the Pontifex Maximus of the World Church of the Creator out of Illinois, and Ben Smith, who went on a shooting spree in 3 different cities where he killed a number of African Americans and Jews and Asians that day. Those groups are groups that claim to be extremely anti-government and Christian identity oriented.
I'll tell you what, we've got some reprobate people running this country. Only in California, and we kind of knew this was happening. Everything happens in stages, in levels and steps. That's the plan. So in California, they are considering to legalize marijuana. You know, not for medical use, just for that. The first step to legalize marijuana in California could happen Tuesday. Lawmakers will vote on Assembly Bill 390, legislation to tax and regulate marijuana. The Assembly's Public Safety Committee is expected to vote after a hearing that begins at 9 a.m. hearing in Sacramento. The bill, authored by San Francisco Assemblyman, San Francisco, you know what? Nancy Pelosi is from San Francisco, and this Assemblyman, Tom Amiano, is from San Francisco, and I'm telling you that the spirit that resides in San Francisco is the spirit that is now trying to run this country, and it ought to be put out. Anyway, he said it would essentially treat pot the same way alcohol is treated under the law and would allow adults over 21 to possess, smoke, and grow marijuana. The law would also call for a fee of $50 per ounce. So that, wow. Now, I'm acting like, man, that's high, man. I bought pot. I've never bought pot in my life. That just sounds $50 an ounce. That's like, man, that's more than silver right now, I think, and would help fund drug eradication and awareness programs. This is stupid. It's idiotic to let people grow drugs, tax them so you can have anti-drug programs. And you and I both know this has nothing to do with the government saying we just want to eliminate drugs out of California. California is drugs. California is drugs, and wine is what it is. It's nothing to do with that. It's about a government in California that is strapped for cash. And they have a cash crop lying in the wings in California. It's called marijuana. And they want $50 an ounce. That's pretty high. We talked about this on the Watchman video program. We've been talking about this all year long. I've preached it. I'm not a prognosticator. I'm not a prophet. I'm not someone who is so smart that I can figure out where everything's going. But I will tell you, several years ago in the state of Missouri, 80% to 20% to constitutionally outlaw gay marriages in the state of Missouri. Hoorah! California, I had suspected all along, was not only going to overturn their own gay marriage ban, but overturn the whole country's gay marriage ban. A federal judge in the gayest city in the world, San Francisco, is now deciding whether or not we, the people, have the right to keep marriage between a man and a woman. I'm not a betting man, but if I were, I would bet that we are going to have this shoved down our throat, just like abortion, euthanasia, pornography, narcotics, and every other imaginable evil required to drag us and our families deeper into the bottomless cesspool. I'm not the one who wrote this, but those words come right out of my mouth. He says, I quote the following: the first federal trial on the constitutionality of state bans on same-sex marriage got underway with former U.S. Solicitor General Theodore Olson quoting the U.S. Supreme Court's own lofty description of matrimony to demonstrate what his clients are being denied. Olson represents two same-sex couples suing to overturn Prop 8, California's voter-approved ban on same-sex marriage. The judge in the case stated the following: if California would simply get out of the, and I'm going to say California because that's what it is, if California would simply get out of the marriage business and classify everyone as a domestic partnership, would that solve the problem, the judge asked? But anyway, I'm not going to continue reading on this. I got some other things, but I want to tell you, you watch and see. You watch and see. If they don't in California, one judge will rule, or a group of 3 judges will rule in an appellate court and say that a gay marriage ban anywhere in the United States of America, including in states that have already amended their constitution, They're going to say that that's wrong and you can't do that, and they're going to strike down the overwhelming majority of the will of the people of the state, sovereign state of Missouri. We shouldn't let them do it. Here's a video sent to me. This is from a company called INSITU, In Situ. I don't know exactly what that means. But it's one of these companies that produces these drone airplanes, and they're not content with just letting the military have them, to spy on, Afghani rebel camps or, Russian military bases or anything like that. They're marketing and selling them to your local police department. I think this is out of Houston. I'm just going to roll this. It's about 4 minutes. I want you to watch this thing and watch. And I'll tell you something. You just watch. Look at the secrecy that is going on in these police departments. They do not want you to know that they've got this miniature airplane flying over you watching what you're doing. They don't want you to know that. Take a look at this. This made my blood boil.
Local 2 investigates the secret aircraft the Houston Police Department is now testing. It's a new unmanned drone that can patrol from the air. Now, it's also a device that HPD wanted to keep under wraps, and now they're being just a little vague at how they're going to use it. KPRC Local 2 investigative reporter Stephen Dean gives you the first look at the plane that could soon be watching you from above.
Neighbors accustomed to livestock and wide open land had no idea what to make of all this. Black trucks, satellite dishes, a radar swirling, and a portable launch pad with something covered up. At the entrance to this Waller County ranch was a Houston police roadblock, checking all the dignitaries arriving for this secret test. Their invitation spelled out no media allowed. We tried to ask this HPD lieutenant on his way back out.
They'll be coming out here in a minute.
They all gathered around the launch pad, big shots with police departments from all over the Houston area. And now, the show they came for, the test you were not supposed to see. It's an unmanned drone aircraft. HPD, the Federal Department of Homeland Security, and other invited guests all watching to see how this drone could be used for police work in and around Houston.
We tracked that drone from News Chopper 2, and that drone was able to use a high-powered camera to track us. Those cameras can actually look into people's homes or even follow them in moving cars, which raises all sorts of new questions.
One issue is going to be law enforcement using this, and when by using these drones are they conducting a search in which they would need probable cause or a warrant.
The military's been dropping bombs and using drones for secret war zone surveillance for years. And last month, the California wildfires were snuffed out with drones joining the other firefighting tankers in the air. This drone is made by a Washington state firm called In Situ. They weigh about 40 pounds, but they can carry 15 pounds more in police gear. They can stay airborne over Houston 15 to 24 hours without landing.
I wasn't ready to publicize this.
HPD quickly hustled together a news conference when it realized our cameras were there for the entire secret test.
Potential public safety applications include mobility, evacuations, homeland security, search and rescue, as well as tactical.
Executive Assistant Chief Martha Montalvo admits that could mean covert police action, but she says it's too early to tell what else HPD will do with the aircraft. Maybe these guys know. We saw many ticket writers from HPD's radar task force, so we asked, are these drones headed for ticketing speeders from the sky?
I'm not ruling anything out.
Back at the secret test site, police helicopter pilots claimed the entire airspace was restricted. They even threatened our Local 2 Investigates pilot with action from the FAA if we didn't leave. But we checked with FAA several times and there never was a flight restriction. That leaves some to wonder whether the police are now ready to use terrorism fears since 9/11 to push the envelope even further into our private lives.
We see that some of these technologies that were being used in the aftermath of 9/11 that we thought were necessary to protect our security in that time are now being used to diminish privacy in other contexts, and that is extremely worrisome.
HPD says it'll tackle privacy and illegal search issues later. Headquarters is hoping to begin policing Houston with this new tool in about 7 months, but more test flights are needed. No word yet on when the next flight is planned or whether it'll be treated as a big secret like the one captured by our cameras. Stephen Dean, KPRC Local 2.
Nicely done. Now, our investigation isn't over. Tomorrow morning, we look into a past crash of an unmanned craft in another city and what it means as HPD prepares to fly them over our homes and schools. That's tomorrow at 6:50 a.m. And remember, if you've got a story for Local 2 Investigates, call the tip line at 713-223-TIPS or feel free to email local2investigates at click2houston.com.
All right. Let's all calm down and relax. Let's situate ourselves a little bit. Let's move forward a little bit. People have been sending me things like this, and you know, I'll tell you, for years, I've been gathering information on just various things all over the place. And there was a time in my life when I was extremely frustrated because I had all this knowledge, all this information, all this stuff that I couldn't get out anywhere. I had no place to give it. I mean, you can only do so much in your local church, but I have a responsibility to preach to these people and be their pastor instead of just being their conspiracy expert. And so I didn't have a venue. Now I have a venue. Now I'm starting to go back through all my old files and I'm going, ooh, yeah, that'll do good. So somebody sent me this and it's really what initiated it. This is St. John the Divine. This is the St. John the Divine Cathedral. I think it's in New York City. And this is an interesting place. Now remember from our video on from our video on the Da Vinci Code, we talked about these Gothic cathedrals that were being built by funded by the Knights Templars, being built by the progenitors of modern Freemasonry, which were the stonemason guilds back in Europe, and how these cathedrals were actually emblems of the female. They were pictures of the woman, the goddess, Mary, Diana, Ashtaroth, Mystery Babylon the Great, the mother of harlots, including the doorways, which was a mandorla, which I won't get into that. But anyway, this is of that same kind of building. It's meant to represent the woman, Mystery Babylon the Great. The interesting thing about this building is it actually has a pyramid with an illuminated eye on the top of it. It was featured in an early edition of, let's see, what is this? 1925, March 1925, Masonic World magazine. You see on the cover of the magazine here, you have the two pillars, Jacob and Boaz. We talk about those. You have on top of those two pillars, remember those two pillars represent the chromosomes where our DNA is stored. Why? Because they're both 23 cubits tall. That's 46. That's the number of chromosomes we have in our cells where our DNA is stored. And here you have the mingling of you have a globe of the earth and a globe of the stars on top of that. That is Daniel chapter 2, the fourth kingdom, they shall mingle themselves with the seed of men. That's why you have that there. And so you have it featured on the Cathedral of St. John Divine in Masonic World. And there was all kinds of things that were associated with this Roman Catholic Church there. And they were doing all kinds. I think it's Roman Catholic. They were doing all kinds of like weird stuff. They were blessing animals there. And every year at Halloween they have this parade through the church, and all these ghostly, ghastly, demonic images are being floated through the church. And I'm just going, ah! But anyway, here is one of the things about this particular church. It is that it's the headquarters of what's called the Temple of Understanding. The Temple of Understanding is one of those New Age groups, or New Age, because it rhymes with sewage. It's one of those New Age groups that is going to assist in bringing all the world's religions together so that we can all get along and buddy, so that everybody can get along while they're going to hell. Okay? I mean, no need to fight before they go to hell. Just everybody get along before they go to hell. So it's the headquarters of the Temple of the Understanding. Here's what New Ager Jean Houston said about this temple. She said the temple's purpose is to facilitate the one world religion through the promoting both of the acceptance and the embrace of all religions, beliefs, and rituals. The Temple of Understanding's meditation room was to be known as the Hall of Illumination, where the Illuminati, masters of wisdom, our leaders of the Temple of Understanding, will train the public in the new humanistic cult to create a new type of mystic. A mystic is someone who follows after the doctrines of Mystery Babylon the Great, the mother of harlots and abominations of the earth. And you say, well, you know, the Catholics, they've been doing that for years. Oh, really? Yeah, they have. And now they're moving it into the Baptist, the Mennonite churches. Here's an article from the Mennonite Church in Canada, Unexpected Encounters with Spiritual Boys. Now I won't read the whole article here, but basically the Mennonite churches are now leading people into contemplative spirituality, or what they call spiritual formation, including Lectio Divina, or contemplative prayer. And contemplative prayer is nothing more than channeling familiar spirits into you. They say, oh, you can hear the voice of God when you go into this trance. That's not the voice of God. The voice of God is heard through the Spirit by reading your King James Bible. But anyway, these boys are encountering unexpected encounters. Well, yeah, they're not encountering God, but these boys are walking this prayer labyrinth. It's a maze. It is a way not known. That's what these things represent. And one boy said, we felt the Holy Spirit of God. Well, I'll tell you what, we're in trouble. Here's another one here. Let me get to it here. I kind of got it out of order here. Here's another one from a Baptist church. Church's year-long journey begins. The Reverend Andrea Jones. See, that just doesn't sound right to me. The word reverend should be followed like Mike or Bill or Frank or John, but not Andrea. This is apparently Raleigh, North Carolina. The start of a new year often occasions grand wishes for world peace, but a North Raleigh congregation has come up with a small expression it hopes will make a difference. Every day this year, the church will line up volunteers, at least one a day, to walk a labyrinth in its backyard garden. Now, this is a Baptist church, Millbrook Baptist Church. Let's see here. I want to read some of the quotes here that were made about this. The plan takes inspiration from a 1% for Peace, an informal nationwide campaign, said Kay Cato, the organizer and the chairwoman of the church's Labyrinth Committee. Do you have to have a Labyrinth Committee? When 1% of the people pray and meditate, our world becomes a better place. That is witchcraft. That is witchcraft, plain and simple. When you believe that you have to get a certain number of people to say the right words and meditate together, then it creates something. That is witchcraft, noetic science. It is every false saying. I want to tell you something. I believe one man can pray and invoke and bring down the power of God. I used that word invoke. I didn't mean to, because I don't believe that you invoke God. But you can get God's attention through prayer. You can get God's attention through crying and repenting. But I will tell you that this nonsense that we have to get enough people together to pray about something so that God will finally listen is false, and it's witchcraft. Labyrinths have enjoyed a resurgence in popularity since 1991. In San Francisco, here we go again, their Grace Cathedral, an Episcopal church, laid a labyrinth on its sanctuary floor and invited the community to walk it, reviving the ancient form as a spiritual tool for modern times. There are now probably a dozen in the Triangle alone. Oh, let's see here. She said, Jones said, people pray in different ways. For some, hands folded and eyes closed is a tool for them. Others are able to find a deeper communion with God, having the full body to pray. You know what she just said? She just said that the way you pray is it's very shallow. It's not deep enough. This is a growing movement. Though few Baptist churches have labyrinths, the imprint has grown popular among Roman Catholics, several Protestant denominations. Let's see here. She introduced, I'm just kind of skipping over some things here for time. She introduced us to the labyrinth, and we all said, what? Said Cato, the Labyrinth Committee chairwoman. She believed it was a way to be in touch with the physical, spiritual, and emotional parts of the self. And then she goes down to say, in ancient times, the labyrinth was used as a substitute for a pilgrimage to Jerusalem. When political upheavals made travel to the United States dangerous, the Roman Catholic Church created 7 pilgrimage cathedrals where people used the labyrinth to make spiritual instead of physical journeys. Oh, here we go. Judy Homer, a Raleigh spiritual director who has been leading workshops on labyrinths for 15 years, said she hopes Millbrook's example will serve as a prototype for other churches. If enough people are working toward peace, it raises the vibration level. To her, the labyrinth is a path of illumination that can transform and change people's brain chemistry. Unlike a maze, a labyrinth has no tricks or dead ends. A single path winds from the outside of the circle to its center, shaped like a flower. Man, I tell you what, there's enough occult junk in there. It just blows my mind. And I understand the language here. And I want you to get this. What they're saying is that the labyrinth will bring you to the same place as the cross. They're lying through their teeth. Somebody sent me this. You can go to Amazon.com. I don't know where else you can find it. The Fusion 3 Bible. We're talking about fusion things. We've been talking about things that are fusing. Remember, this whole idea is Daniel chapter 2, the fourth kingdom. They shall mingle themselves with the seed of men. That's what the fusion is. The number 3, they were talking about triangles earlier in this thing. And the number 3 is the number for them adding to man's two-strand DNA, which would be a triple helix. Here is something from the Nexus Church. We talked in last week's broadcast that Google had just introduced a phone called the Nexus One. And I told you that the word Nexus is like a gateway between one world and the other world. It's like the connecting point. So the letter X here is important. It represents the yin-yang, the blade and the chalice, the male and the female, the square and compass of Freemasonry, but it also represents the X chromosomes where our DNA is stored. This is the Nexus Church, a church for the city daring to live out the full adventure of knowing and doing the will of God. Though impact teams made up of Nexus participants or through impact teams made up of Nexus participants and urban missionaries from partner churches, we seek to bring about holistic transformation and empowerment to children, families, and communities. You're invited to join the cause. Here's another one. First Baptist. The Baptists, the Nazarenes, the Pentecostals, they're being taken over. Even the independent Baptists are losing their churches. Okay, they're losing their churches because of the onslaught of the invasion. We warned about in our invasion series, Invasions Parts 1 and 2, followed up by the emerging church, that these things were going to take place. I'm preaching on Sunday morning. We have a visiting preacher here this Sunday morning. We'll have the video for those who are on our watchers list. But we have... I'm preaching a sermon series again on principalities, powers, rulers of darkness, and spiritual wickedness in high places. We are being invaded in this world. Here's First Baptist Church of Greenville, South Carolina, and they have what's called the Nexus Center, cultivating spiritual transformation. And then, of course, we have Nexus Hair Shampoo, a revolution for curls. And I have to leave you with this. Michael down in Florida sent me this. You know, in the NIV, they don't call Lucifer, they call him the morning star. Okay? So think about that as you look at the devil's in the details. Here we even have morning star, triple helix, sausage. You know, I guess that makes sense because sausage is from pork and pork is an unclean. Yeah, I think I get that. Anyway, appreciate you bearing with me. We need to pray. We need to pray. We need God to watch over us and keep us because we cannot keep ourselves. We need to be busy about the Master's work. If you think that there's somebody that you can warn them. If you can't do it personally, give them one of our DVDs. Show them our watchers just give them a track. Give them Bible verses, anything. To warn people that we're headed for serious trouble in this world. That's what watchmen are supposed to do. We're not just supposed to watch and say, oh, look, that's neat. Look what's coming over there. We're supposed to watch and blow the trumpet to warn people in the last days. Let's make sure that we warn people that we love first, and then warn people, anybody else. If they won't come, then start warning everybody else, but warn people. Our days are drawing short on this earth and in this country. It's time to get right with God right now. Appreciate you. I love you. I believe that you pray for this ministry. I can tell that you do. And you keep doing that. You keep praying for our home church, that God will continue to bless us here and use us here for His glory and not mine. I promise you, I don't want the credit for this. I really don't. So anyway, keep in touch with us. We appreciate everything that you help us do. We appreciate it. You send all the stories. You help us out with a donation or two every now and then. And that, I'm telling you, that just means a lot to this little bitty church here in Festus, Missouri, in our top secret broadcast compound, because we don't want anybody to know where we're at on 1233 American Legion Drive. So keep that a secret. All right, this is Pastor Mike. I love you. We'll see you the next time. Bye-bye.